afternoon. Thank you for joining us. My partner in crime, Zachary Green. I'm Riccoh player, and this is...
Episode 11, I think we're...
9. No, it's episode 9.
Episode 9, that's right.
Episode 9.
We're having so much fun, we can't keep track of it, but we are broadcasting from the Teufelhunden Tavern here in Hilton Head Island. And today we have a very special guest. You know, we talk about warriors come in all shapes and sizes. Warriors aren't always Marines. Warriors aren't always the knight in shining armor. Warriors are people that overcome obstacles in their life and achieve greatness. And we've certainly got someone there. We've got Barry Green. Barry Green is a former principal bassist with the Cincinnati Symphony for almost 30 years, has written a couple international best-selling books, and is probably one of the top solo bass players in the world. So with that, welcome.
Thank you, Zach. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, great. Well, why don't we start off with you telling us a little bit of your background, kind of start with your childhood and take us through where you are today, if you don't mind.
Well, a lot of people ask me why I played the bass or what brought me to the bass. My first instrument was actually the quote unquote accordion. I started the accordion when I was 7 years old because I heard a professional accordionist across the street practicing, and I thought that was really cool. And that was my first musical experience. But after playing the accordion for about 7 years, the music teacher from the local junior high school saw I had all this musical experience, but he had no place for an accordion in the school band or orchestra. So he went to my parents and pleaded for me to join them in some capacity, but just not with my accordion. So my folks said, okay, if you want to play music in the school program, you've got your accordion at home, choose an instrument that's so big it won't even fit through the front door. And it was a choice of either the tuba or the bass. And I started actually with the tuba because I thought everybody looked at the tuba player in the marching band. Does that make sense, Riccoh, with the
Absolutely.
with the group? And then I decided the most natural doubling instrument, because I love music so much, I could play in every group that the school offered, whether it was the orchestra, the band, the Dixieland band, the combo, the jazz band, if I played the string bass as well as the tuba. And so I took up the bass after the tuba, and then eventually I quit the tuba because I realized it was just too heavy and I didn't like marching in the back of the band. I decided I'd rather be the drum major if I'm going to march in a marching band and lead out in the front and just concentrate on the band. So I became a drum major of the marching band and concentrated on the bass, just loved music, playing in every ensemble that I could through high school. Eventually, I majored in music, went to Indiana University, although prior to that I had music scholarships to be drum major of most of the Big Ten universities and University of Texas. And that was my initial desire, was to continue my drum majoring, strutting, leadership role, which was a lot of fun. My parents still didn't like that. So they wanted me to concentrate on liberal arts and do anything other than be a drum major of the Salvation Army Band when I left the university. So I went to San Jose State for a year and a half, took a lot of other general education courses, get them out of the way. And they said, if you still want to major in music after that, you can do that, but we hope you'll become a doctor or a lawyer instead of a musician, because they were worried that I would be able to support myself. So after choosing to go to Indiana after 2 years, Indiana University was the finest music school in the country at the time, still is one of the really great schools in the world. I found that I could be a performer. Initially, I started in music education, kind of flunked out of that. It wasn't really for me right then. And it turns out that I came back to music ed. But initially, the academic side wasn't my strength, that I just loved playing the instrument so much and concentrated on practicing and realized that I could succeed quite well with the bass. One of the reasons I took it seriously was meeting mentors, people that inspired me to work even harder because they believed in me. And the person at Indiana University who took me aside and said that I really had the talent and the skills to be a leader and to be a principal player of some major orchestra. And that was this famous violin teacher named Joseph Gingold. He was a legend at the university and the teacher of all the great young violin soloists, including Joshua Bell, who is one of his prize students. Maybe you've heard of Joshua Bell. But just getting encouragement from a violin teacher when I'm a bass player, saying, you can really do this if you want to do that. Then it put a seed in my head, and I started to really work really hard with the instrument. And after only 2.5 years later, I was fortunate to not only get my first job with the Nashville Symphony in Tennessee, but then the Cincinnati Symphony Major Orchestra, one of the great orchestras in the world. I got that job when I was just 21 years old, only by practicing a few hours.
You were the youngest principal of any instrument in the country at that time. Is that correct?
Absolutely true. Absolutely true.
So for our listeners, explain what the principal is within a section versus a stand player.
Well, a principal is the leader of the section, the first player when there is a solo part where it's not just for all the basses to be playing at the same time, but only for one bass to be playing, then the principal plays that. They have to decide the directions that the bow goes, whether it's up or down or sideways or whatever, for all the parts, decide sometimes our part is divided into 3 or 4 additional parts, even though we're all bass players, and we're responsible for that. We have, as it is in the military,
I was just going to say, like in the
command.
military, you're the officer, and your
Right.
rest of the section are basically the enlisted. Is that right?
Absolutely. In fact, the people that are enlisted in the bass section, they're really not supposed to speak in a public setting when we're having a professional rehearsal. The time is very limited, and everybody's on the clock. And so, if there's any issues dealing with the music, the section players go to me, and I either handle it myself or I take it to the conductor or to the management or whatever is necessary. So I'm the intermediate chain of command. All of the new people that come into the orchestra have to go through the principals. We are the audition committee, so we're in charge of the essentially assessment and hiring of the people that go into our section. We also physically have to lead as well through our body. And so theoretically speaking, if we have a lot of rests, for example, where we're counting while the violins are playing, and I'm supposed to be counting, and if I don't come in, the conductor can't yell at the section. The section doesn't have to go unless I go. So when I step forward, when they see me getting ready to play, that's when they get ready to play. And if I make a mistake, it's not their problem, it's my problem. So
Well,
it's
Barry,
a lot of responsibility. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So I have very little to no musical expertise. The extent goes probably using pencils and playing on top of a desk as a drum is the extent of my musical expertise. But starting at 7 years old, you have well beyond 10,000 hours of musical expertise. Is that fair?
Well, that's so true. And I'm practicing as much now as I was when I was in college, within reason. I mean, after I got my job, I mean, I still feel I'm learning as much and as faster. I'm a better student than all of my students that I teach because I'm more invested in the field. And I think most all of the leaders in our profession they're the ultimate learners as well, and they're still creating new things, creating new literature. I feel every time I complete a program that I'm a better player playing a particular piece, regardless of whether I've played it before, because really I'm bringing to the moment what I've learned in my life experience, which is who I am. Because as musicians, we're really expressing our personality ourselves, our humanity in music. It happens to be that the language is music, and the intermediate voice is the sound of the instrument, but it's me as a human being speaking. So the more wise, the more mature, the more experience I gain in every day of my life, I bring that to every note that I play on the instrument. And so therefore, that's why I feel it's...
Sorry about
Sure.
that. How many years have you been playing the bass?
Maybe, 60 years, maybe more.
Okay, so after 60 years, I'm hearing you right then saying you're still practicing every day?
Well, I practice every day that I have something to work on. So I'm not going to be practicing if I don't have a program that's coming up or if I'm not learning a particular music. But when I'm preparing for a concert or a recital or any kind of an event, I am practicing every day. Absolutely.
So, sir, what I'd like to do is just have you share a little bit about your time in the Marine Corps. You've had how many years in the Marine Corps?
32 years in the Marine Corps.
And are you still PTing? Are you still going through professional education and those other type of things?
So to Zach's point, without question, I have a battle rhythm for life. If folks are in any of the services, young, middle, or older, mature, I think that to be successful, whether you serve for 4 years or 40, you have to have a battle rhythm. So physical training, professional education, a good night's sleep, 7 days a week, that's the fundamental basic to take care of yourself. And I feel that taking care of yourself ensures that you can take care of those above you and below you and to your sides.
Yeah, I think that's great. So here we have someone that you think of once you learn an instrument, it's learned. You just kind of, it's like a bicycle. But here we've got someone that's been playing for decades, literally the top of their game. And they're still understanding that importance of training and that dedication and everything else.
We put on many programs. I mean, like I was the director of our International Society of Bassists for about 8 or 9 years, and we put on conferences. And I think I've attended virtually for the last 55 years since the organization has been going. I've probably gone to every single conference, minus 1 or 2 that were for a medical reason. And that's where we are the consummate students. People say we go to these conferences, we're putting them on for everybody else, but really we're putting them on for ourselves because we always leave inspired with new ideas for our students, for ourselves. And it's really the camps that are for the kids. We bring in our colleagues, but it's really for ourselves because not only do we have a great time sitting around bars like you have there right now, but we also we learn and we benefit from that.
So, sir, if I heard you correctly, for more than 5 decades, you have other professionals sharpening each other. Did I hear that correctly?
Totally.
And Zach and I talk about that all the time. Iron sharpens iron, and never stop being a student.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things a lot of entrepreneurs fail is they start a program, they get all this great training, they go to all these great things, and then they start getting into that battle rhythm and they stop that personal development. And that's really where you start to see challenges, especially with entrepreneurs around that 4 or 5 year mark, where they're so engrossed in their business, they forget about development. Barry, I think one thing you said that really struck with me is I think the true hallmark of a warrior leader is one that inspires and develops other leaders. And here you are on the top of your game, one of the top musicians in the world in your field, but yet you're a teacher. You're still giving it back. Talk to us a little bit about the importance of giving back and teaching, because I think you see that a lot with a lot of your colleagues that are at the absolute top, that their focus no longer is necessarily about themselves, but about giving back to others.
Well, I love teaching for a number of reasons. First of all, I love young people. So that kind of keeps us connected. Our students are like a part of our family. And when you left the house when you were 18 years old, I needed to find more children to replace to place our children. And so that's a family thing. Our community is small and essentially internationally. We all kind of know each other. And so there's a part of the joy of teaching is watching somebody grow. A unique relationship is with the music teacher because there's few mentors or teachers in anybody's educational life that can stick with them for 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 years. If you have an English teacher, you're in a class for 1 year and then you're done. And then you go to another level or another teacher. But the music teacher is often the closest person developmentally to the young person as well as their parents. And many of young people don't get along with their parents that much, but their music teachers stay as a constant source of inspiration and mentorship, which is very satisfying. It's almost like grandparents. When you have grandchildren, you know, you can enjoy them, but then you could leave them too, so you don't have to change their diapers and you don't have to be involved in them in the same way. But as a music teacher, yes, we can have that supportive developmental relationship as human beings, because what we're doing is we're nurturing souls. We're nurturing individuals that will use music as a way to learn about life and enjoy their life for the rest of their life. And this is what we're growing. And so that relationship has to include that human side too. It's not just playing notes, playing bowings, reading a piece of music from a page, but it's contributing your heart and your soul, communicating with other people, and essentially we're in the entertainment position, so we're changing lives. We're inspiring people to feel good about what they do, and that's a very special trust that a teacher has to be training other people to be the people that deliver pleasure, joy, inspiration to the world and to the others that they will encounter. So that's a very satisfying thing. For me, the joy is in the growth, watching them grow up and being a mentor to them. It also is a selfish thing because two things. I learn from them. It's unbelievable the things that I continue to pick up from kids that have never seen a problem before. You know, they talk about the smart fifth grader. Well, they are smart and they have solutions and they have insights to things that I haven't even seen or even heard before. So that's a dividend as well. So we learn from them. We enjoy that. Those are reasons why I teach. Another aspect is that when we perform, it's almost like a sport. It's a physical exercise. When you teach, it's another whole part of your humanity that's exercised. It's your relationship. It's your soul. And so you're, as a human being, you're massaging and inspiring and feeding different parts of yourself as a human being, both as a performer or like an athlete, and then as a teacher, one who's using your brain and your intellect and your spirit to communicate with people. So it's a much more rounded experience as well.
So building off of that, let's talk a little bit and switch gears from music to the inner game of music, a tremendous book. Can you tell our listeners just kind of a quick third grade version of what the inner game is, and then how you applied it to the inner game of music and some of the ways that that's changed your life and changed other people's lives?
Well, the inner game of music is about concentration. And so we've been speaking about my role as a bass teacher and as a bass player. And for many years, I wore these two hats. I have a fascination with the whole concept of how we concentrate the mind, its ability to focus its attention and to tune out distractions. Everybody gets nervous, no matter what discipline. The concept is with us for the whole life. It's human nature, is that we have this inner voice that talks to us and presents issues of doom and gloom and anxiety and fear and judgment and criticism. And we have to operate in our world with the knowledge and the reaction to this voice in our head that is always kind of guiding us away from what we want to be doing and taking our attention with doubts and fears, which is natural, as opposed to what it is that we're doing. So the inner game of music came from sports books in the mid-'70s, written by Timothy Galway, The Inner Game of Tennis. And I developed his concepts that were so popular, using tennis as a metaphor in life for anybody exercising any activity that they have practiced that's a physical skill. So it could be public speaking, it could be sports, it could be drama, it could be music, dance, anything. If you're using your body and if you're up there communicating and somebody's watching or listening to you and judging you, then we're all of a sudden now playing two games. We're trying to do what we want to do, which is express ourselves as an artist. And then there's the competition side is, do you get a good grade? Are you going to pass the test? Are you going to get promoted? Are people going to like you? So this is why we call it a game, because it's a constant competition of attention. Are you paying attention to the voice in your head that's possibly distracting you, or are you staying focused on what you're doing? And that's what the inner game is about. It's really quite simple. It's based on Eastern philosophy. It's been around for thousands of years because it's human nature to get distracted. And it just is dedicated to focusing on one thing at a time and keeping it simple and learning to stay focused on that rather than being distracted by noises that you may hear from the outside, whether it's criticisms, judgments, or just human nature.
Sir, that is outstanding, because you stated everybody gets nervous. Everyone has an inner voice. And for Zach and I, we believe our concept is rooted on the warrior voice. We are convinced everyone has a warrior's voice. If you listen to it, usually is positive, usually is pointing you in the right direction, but it's through hardship and challenge across the spectrum of whatever folks are doing, where that warrior voice can be the difference maker with success or failure.
It's a great point. So with that, sir, I'd like to kind of unpack that a little bit more. Tell us specifically some of the tools and techniques you use in your inner game workshops, and then I'd like you to think about how we can apply that to just life and things outside of music. So give us a couple music examples of how you use those inner game, and then give us some examples on how we could apply that to maybe somebody that's in a difficult job or dealing with a difficult boss or has a lot of nervousness when it comes to presenting PowerPoints in front of a group or public speaking or something along those lines.
Sure. Well, it's really quite simple. Our goal is to be relaxed and focused at the same time. So how can we be calm and at the same time alert and bring to the moment every skill that we bring to the moment? So if you're speaking, if you're doing a physical exercise, if you're fighting, if you're playing music, that's your task. But you want to do that with all your attention without the distractions. So our goal is a state of relaxed concentration with we're calm and we're alert and we're able to respond to any obstacle that comes to us, whether it's dangerous or not. And then we're alert. We do that through 3 skills of attention. And that is only about highlighting these 3 things, which are really only for musicians. It's only music. There's no words to it. So there's awareness techniques, which means you pay attention to what's going on, paying attention to sights, sounds, feelings, and what we understand about music. So sights could be the notes on the page. Sounds could be literally the sounds that are going on. The feelings, the energies, and what you know about music. There's commitment skills, which is 2-part, and it translates to any discipline in the world. What are you doing and how are you doing it? Okay, so what are you doing? So you're playing a beautiful song. Well, how are you doing it? Well, for musicians, well, they're going to use their voice. They're going to use their bowings. They're going to use fingerings. If you play Bach on the harp, or you play Bach on the flute, or you play Bach on the bass, everybody has their unique way of making Bach sound like Bach. So a harpist has pedals that they have to use and string things. A string player has a bow and an instrument. A brass player blows through a mouthpiece. A singer uses their voice. So you have to know what's the function and what's your tool. So as a soldier, you're marching down the field. What's your tool? You've got your feet and your guns and your equipment and whatever it is that you bring with you, and you have a particular job to do, and so being clear on what you're doing and how you're going to do it, creates a calm mind. And for musicians, when they get nervous, or anybody gets nervous, it's often because they forget what they're doing or how to do it. Why am I here? I've been doing this all my life, and now all of a sudden I'm nervous. Well, do you really want to do what you want to do? And if you do, just go ahead and do it. So Nike has a lot to do with commitment skills. Nike, you just put on one of those shirts and you just do it when you're clear on that. So there's 3 skills: the awareness skills, commitment skills, and the last one are what we call metaphors. They're called trust skills. And that has to do with bringing a metaphor that best represents your job. So for a musician, if you're playing a piece of music that is really complicated and it's got a lot of notes on it and it looks black, it's very intimidating, you get nervous. But if you are playing a piece of music that, while it's on a piece of music, it may look difficult, but when you realize it's just a song, well, you sing a song. Or it's a lullaby, or it's a march, or it's an explosion. Say it's an explosion. Well, for a musician to make a big accent, it might be hard, but to play, imagine it's an explosion. These are trust skills which any child could understand, relates to something that they know and that they understand. So if you're learning to fire a gun, or if you're learning to make a sail, it could be an example like pretend you are teaching somebody something, or pretending you're talking to a child, or pretending that you just bought something, what you loved about it. These are things different than making a speech trying to convince somebody that you're good or that you have to buy a particular product. So these metaphors are very common the way we teach young children, because they don't have the intellect to understand all of the complicated adult things that we put on them. And a big part of trust skills is returning to that childlike understanding of, oh, it's just that. It's something that's much simpler. And those are our techniques.
Common saying in the military: keep it simple. I mean, everything breaks down to keeping it simple. And I love the example of analogies and other ways to kind of get people to understand the bigger picture rather than just simply their individual jobs that they have to do. How does that fit into the overall mission and the commander's intent?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Well, sir, we're coming to the close of our podcast here with you. Thank you so much for your time and your insight. I think I pulled relaxed concentration is the one that I will try to implement in my own battle rhythm. Before we close, what are you working or what can we look for from you in the future for 2022?
Well, the Inner Game is about the mind, and I wrote 2 other books which have to do with the human spirit and the body. So together the 3 make up the mind, the body, and spirit, because it's all about the whole person. And so that's my total work. You can approach things from any one of those perspectives, but they're all connected to being part of the human being. So I'm continuing to develop writings and musical projects that also integrate the message that we're human beings communicating with other human beings, and that we're bringing inspiration. And any way that I could get that message across, that's what I'm dedicated to. So I've done several musical programs that have narration and have videos that are based on stories about people pursuing artistry. I call them, they're like Karate Kid stories for music, because they're all based on a great Tai Chi master teaching Eastern philosophy of concentration and growth. And these lessons are from a place of consciousness, not a question of dogmatic authoritative instruction. There's the yin and the yang of everything. And so I'm on the side of the more natural human approaches to that. So any way I could get those message, whether it's a musical production, whether it's a book, whether it's an article, whether it's video productions. I've been doing a lot of video productions for musicians that have to do with connecting them to their higher power. And these are things that I'm constantly involved in.
Riccoh, I think it's interesting, and it's a great question. I mean, that is the epitome, I feel, of the warrior's journey. Is mind, body, and spirit. They're all 3 interconnected. And what we learned today is it doesn't just apply to entrepreneurship or to the military or to corporate America. Here's a great example of music being used for that. Before we finish up here, how can people get in touch with you? How can they learn more if they want to learn more about the Inner Game or any of the other programs that you do?
Well, I have a lot on my website, including several shorter articles. The website is innergameofmusic.com, www.inner, game, G-A-M-E, of music.com. And my personal contact is just as easy. It just includes my name, B-A-R-R-Y, Barry, at innergameofmusic.com.
That's great. Well, we finish every one of our podcasts with a dedication to a fellow veteran that is no longer with us. And we thought it would be very appropriate to focus on somebody that I'm sure you're very near and dear and know very well, and that is John Coltrane, truly one of the great legends and grandfathers of jazz. John Coltrane actually enlisted in the Navy during World War II, right after the first atomic bomb was dropped on Japan. He trained as an apprentice seaman, was sent to Pearl Harbor. And during that time when he was in Pearl Harbor, they really started to realize the musical talents that he had. And he actually joined a group on bass called the Melody Masters, which was a bass swing band. And by the end of the time he had served, he ended up having a leadership role in that band. It was during that time that he made his first recordings with other Navy musicians playing saxophone and other jazz standards and bebop. So with that, we'd like to honor one of your fellow musicians, John Coltrane, United States Navy. Well, sir, that comes to the end of our program today, and we'll finish it like we always do with Semper Fidelis.
All right. Thank you. Semper Fi.
All right.